Okay, hello. Welcome to the Katie Black Show. Today I have with me.
Jeremy Davis.
What's up, Jeremy? How are you doing?
Doing good. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah.
Um, well, first of all, I always ask guests like, where were you born slash where did you grow up?
I was born in Summerville, South Carolina, so like right outside of Charleston, maybe like 30 minutes. Yeah.
Mm.
So I'm a little country boy, but I've been
And
in Charlotte now for a while.
what was that like?
It was good. So Somerville, when I was growing up, now it's kind of like, I would say if you're a Charlotte person, is kind of equivalent to, or it's just much more suburban. It's just like, it's a modern suburban area. But when I was growing up, it was very much like farm country. And my family owned a farm and operated a farm. So that was kind of my childhood, was very different from life now. But at the same time, we were sort of like, that was sort of the end of that part of my family's like history there, just because things change, over time. So, but it was cool. It was just like a very kind of grassroots, I guess, kind of existence where we were farming and just a lot of outdoor stuff, being in the woods and kind of just living that life. Yeah.
Cool. And so, what age or how did you migrate to Charlotte?
Well, I moved here as an adult, but so I guess I came here maybe like in 2008-ish, somewhere around there. But I went to college in South Carolina and Columbia, and then I moved to Atlanta and then to Charlotte. So yeah, I've spent my entire childhood in Somerville.
What do you think, real quick, of like since you've been here since '08? What do you think of all the growth here in town?
Um, as a musician and as somebody who just, kind of makes a living as things are like kind of busy. I like that aspect of it. I think when I first came to the area, I can remember Uptown just being absolutely a wasteland, to be honest. Like I remember, 2008, there was an economic, not a boom, the opposite of a boom. There was just things were not great
Yeah.
economically, and I remember there was some of the buildings now that are the skyscrapers where just the bones of them were just sitting there for a couple years while being unfinished, and because everything just kind of halted, and if you went up there like after 5 o'clock, there'd be nobody around, and there was only like a few things that would maybe like bars and stuff that would be have people, whereas now you go up there at any point, it's just there's people everywhere, and that does present challenges. The busyness of Charlotte can be frustrating, I guess, at times, but it's also kind of nice. I've had that other experience where it's like, oh, there's kind of nothing going on, and like, there's always been stuff going on, but I think in general, it's just, I'd rather live in a city that is like wanting to do cool stuff and has people that are interested and wanting to put on interesting events and that kind of vibe versus wishing there for more. Someone who is an artist too, like that also presents challenges, where financially it's like when I first lived in Charlotte, my first rental house was $500. I mean, you could never find, and I'd say probably almost anywhere, you can never find somewhere that cheap in a city anymore. But it was just much more affordable in a lot of ways. So that is challenging, but I think, again, it's all about the balance, and you can't have one without the other. So I think hopefully we can grow in a way that still cultivates, especially from my perspective, the arts and things that people find interesting about the places that they like to live. Because it's really easy for people with a lot of money, or not even people, but companies with a lot of money to kind of come in and take over. When you look at a neighborhood like Noda or Plaza Midwood, where those are really interesting places because of the arts, and we're sort of on the cusp of like losing that. But again, like things always change, and there'll be new spots and stuff like that, and new neighborhoods, and in the places that have done a good job of cultivating that culture in those neighborhoods like Noda and Plaza here in Charlotte are still there too, because they've done a good job of that. So
No, yeah, I agree. I interviewed someone that said something to the effect of like most of the cool kids that made Plaza have left, but
yeah,
I don't know. I just
I
like.
mean,
I mean, obviously, like not all of the cool kids,
yeah,
but just
yeah.
I get what you're saying. So you obviously dropped that you're a musician, which is how I know
Mhm.
you. So
Yep.
at what point in your life did that come about?
Not till so I'm 43, so I'm not that young, but not that old, I guess either. But I didn't really start my musical journey until I was in my late 20s. So I'm still like I've been doing it for a while at this point, but I didn't put out my first album until I was around 28. And that was just like a lot of years in the making of just me figuring out just how to write a song. So I mean, I kind of I started playing guitar in high school, just like teaching myself, by like looking at stuff online, chord charts and things you can find. If you're a musician out there, you know of like different sites where you can just kind of find the basic info and teach yourself. And so I started in high school, and then just through college, I really wanted to have a band, but like all of my friends at that point, like I tried with a couple different groups of people, and just everybody was just kind of like less interested than me. I went to school for audio engineering, and so at the time I thought I wanted to work in a studio, and kind of over a longer period of time of graduating college, working at a studio, and kind of being in that world of an audio engineer, I realized, oh, I actually want to I want to make my own music, not as much as I want to work with other people, even though I also enjoy that too. And I've done a lot of that. Yeah, it was sort of just like getting out of college and figuring out things, and then having that moment of like, oh, I actually, because I even had an interview with a studio in Atlanta that I won't say the name of the place, but the person was like very, very rude, and like the studio world, and if you're in the kind of like top echelon of the places that are working with like major label artist type studios, which there are very few of at this point. But sometimes they can be. It's very competitive, you know. So if you're an engineer, everybody wants to work there, and so I can understand they're kind of like picky. But anyways, I had this interview with this place, and that was one of the things that came out of it was that the person I was interviewing with asked me, well, do you want to be an engineer or an artist? And I was like, well, I want to be both. And I was having this moment in front of her of like, oh, I actually want to be both. Like, and she's like, no, you can't be both, which I find to be completely absurd. Some of the greatest songwriters have also been engineers or producers, just kind of to keep to the point. Like, I think I had that moment when I realized like, oh, I'd rather be on the other side of things more than I would on the production side, and that kind of kicked off my journey. And then when I moved to Charlotte, I started my first band was with my sister and her husband, my brother-in-law. So we kind of have like a family band.
Very cool.
So, yeah.
Well, not that I'm in the same industry, but I've gotten, yeah, I don't know, just the whole conversation of like, you can't be multiple things, essentially. I don't know.
Yeah, and I mean, I kind of understood what she was saying in a way because they were looking for people who were like, all I care about is audio engineering and being a studio engineer, and they're working with like Elton John and people like that. So in a way, it's like I get what she's saying that we just want someone who's dedicated to this one thing. But I feel like, and that was also a long time ago. So I think nowadays it's so common for people to be artists and engineers and producers. But I think it's always been common. That was just a funny experience that I had where it was definitely like a formative moment for me of having that, because I really didn't think about that before I walked in there. I had already been working at a studio, but it was a much smaller place, and in a way, like the stakes were lower, I guess. But I still was like, I was working there and I had experience, and this lady just was like very rude, but also it helped me realize some stuff. Yeah.
Interesting. Because I could dissect, like, I want to know about like Atlanta a little bit, but so I just recently found out this through TikTok that your name is Jeremy because I associated
Elonzo Wesley.
Yes. And so is that a conversation you have to have a lot?
It is, yeah. And after all this time, I haven't really figured out. I like sometimes I'll sign my emails Jeremy Elonzo Wesley. Sometimes I just say Elonzo Wesley. I haven't ever really figured out a good way to handle it, but it was my dad's name, so it's a family thing. That was kind of part of like the journey for me too, and we can talk about that too. But yeah, I have the conversation all the time because I don't necessarily say that off the top, and so people are like, wait a minute, who's Alonzo Wesley if you're Jeremy?
Right.
But it's me. It was just my dad's name, and I thought it was a really cool band name when I was like kind of figuring out back then, kind of that same time frame that we were just talking about. Like I knew I wanted to have a band and I wanted to put out music, and I didn't know much else. But it was actually my old band was just called Elonzo without the Wesley, so it was a different sound, and then I transitioned to being Elonzo Wesley.
Very cool. And so do you kind of obviously like answer to both? Like if someone calls, you know what I mean?
Yes, if I'm like at a show or somewhere, or somebody sees me, like I work at the Evening Muse for the open mic, and sometimes people will call me Alonzo, and I'm just like, hey, what's up? Like I know they don't know, and it's like it's fine. Like I like it. Like my dad passed away when I was a kid, and that's kind of part of why I wanted to use that name too. And so it's nice, honestly, just to hear it sometimes. Like
cool.
When when you lose somebody, sometimes you kind of they're always there in your mind, but it's nice to sort of like just literally hear somebody's name sometimes.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I get that without getting that,
Yeah.
But how would you like, which I hate like categorizing, but like how would you describe the kind of music you do?
I would say it's like folk, Americana. Sometimes I say indie folk because I was very influenced by a wide range of music, but definitely singer-songwriters and folk artists, but as well as like a lot of indie bands. Like I'd say Wilco is a really good example of what I would call like an indie band, that they're sort of blending a whole bunch of stuff. And I also grew up listening to like blues and just all kinds of different things, but I was always drawn to stuff that was more what I do now, like folk, Americana, like stuff that's drawing on more, the simpler forms of music, or not even the simpler forms, but just the stuff that is more just rootsy, I guess. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really like that, and I like using those. Like, the band now is essentially a string band, so we've got upright bass, mandolin, pedal steel, and acoustic guitar. So it's similar to bluegrass sounding, but we don't do traditional bluegrass, and that's like its own thing. But we're kind of like, I sometimes say bluegrass adjacent. So
I saw on that you had cosmic folk. I thought that was cool.
Yeah, because I think my music, my songwriting sometimes is more about that more esoteric, like what is the point of life kind of stuff. Why are we here? I like that kind of content in music. And I try to put that in there. And then also, like I said, all the different influences, there's definitely a lot of like psychedelic music and things that are more, loosely I would call cosmic, that just sort of like the point of it is to take you outside of yourself. And I like that's something I always try to do with the way that I play or write, especially live performances. Like, we do some improvising and things like that, where it's sort of meant to just bring you outside of whatever your normal experience is.
Can you describe the Evening Muse for people that aren't from here, or maybe that are from here and don't know what the Evening Muse is?
Yeah, it's a music venue in the Noda neighborhood of Charlotte. So that's if you're not from here, it's like a bar district that has a couple different music venues, and then a bunch of bars and cool places to hang out. But yeah, the Muse is a listening room specifically that's like very rare. So like I work there, for the open mics on Mondays, and then for other shows when I kind of like fill in as a secondary sound person. But I've worked there for like one of the ones that's popping up right now is this kid drove from like Mississippi to open up for someone for one show, which is not, as a career advice, like not a great like way to make money as a musician. driving for one show that far, right? But it's that kind of place where they've cultivated the environment of, this is a listening room. You come here to like be quiet and listen. Not in like a forceful way, but in a way of like, we're here to respect the music. And you don't get that everywhere, because like sometimes music is just in the background somewhere, like some guy's in the corner playing. And as a musician, you have to do those gigs too, but that's what makes the Muse special, is that it's a small place where you can see somebody that will go on to be hugely famous, and you can be in a small room with them, and just have that, I would say, like, unparalleled experience. I mean, I'm assuming there are people out there who have never been there or even been to a show like that, and it's something that has its own special place. But yeah, the Evening Muse definitely specifically is like highly regarded by musicians and songwriters, especially, that that it's a place of note that you want to go, that you want to perform at.
Yeah, I haven't been there in a while. I'll have to come back through. Always a cool vibe. And so this is just because I'm a big writer and have never really like nailed down songwriting.
Yeah.
Is there any like tips, or like, I don't know, is it just kind of, because I know with some stuff it comes to you in the moment and it comes, and that's it. I don't know, any tips for...
Yeah. I always say, I feel like people just are afraid to sound bad. Like, don't be afraid to sound bad, because no one's... I mean, and it could be like in your environment. Like, I don't know if you have a place, specific to music, that you can be in your house and like not care if anybody hears you, or maybe nobody can hear you, that kind of thing. But I think in general, it's just like people, they'll sit there and they'll go, I don't have any ideas. And it's like, just say literally just anything. Just, go with it. And if maybe it's like a terrible song, but you can't write a good song without writing a few bad songs, and I have notebooks over here full of bad songs that I hope nobody ever reads. And I think that's something that nobody ever really, like, generally speaking, you don't hear people talk about that. It's just like practice, and do it all the time. And I would say, yeah, that's true, because it is like a little bit of a muscle of like, if you're doing it a lot, things kind of maybe come more freely, but also just don't be afraid to sound bad. You don't have to share it with people, just until you kind of know, until you're ready. And I think that's important too, like, definitely at some point be getting feedback and kind of notice like I think as an artist it's always good to get feedback, but when you're beginning too, and if you're unsure, that's helpful. But yeah, I think just don't be afraid to sound bad.
Just do it.
Yeah. And if you're feeling stuck, just start somewhere. It doesn't have to be, ideas come from the weirdest places. But even sometimes, like, I try to write everything down, and then I have an editing process where if I get stuck at a point, like maybe I have like a couple lines and I'm sitting here playing and going over and over it. When I get to a point where I am stuck, I'll sort of like start over from the beginning and like reread it, and have a few things like that kind of help me like
pick back up,
move past the stuck part. Yeah.
Cool. Well, no, that's good advice, because like I said, I'm definitely not a singer.
Yeah.
But I've always had the, songwriting, writing the song. Growing up, did you have like a favorite artist or a favorite band that you really admired, or a couple?
Yeah. So I was a big Pearl Jam kid when I was like in high school. They had already had their like prime time, I think, but like I found music a lot through, this is something I haven't talked about a lot, but my mom growing up owned a Christian bookstore, and she was very like against what she would call like secular music, meaning like anything that's not Christian. And so of course when I became a teenager, I was like, I want all of it. That's not whatever I'm not supposed to do. But like I had some friends who, like one of my friends specifically, his older brother had like all the cool music, and this is back in the days of CDs, and so we had these big like CD binders we could lug around, and he was nice enough to let us listen to his music. And so one of his favorite bands was Pearl Jam. So they were somebody who just sort of got me into, realizing there's just a whole huge world out there. But also growing up, like talking about my mom, like outside of that scenario of her not wanting to like me or wanting me to listen to Christian music, she was really into just the music of her childhood. So like, you know, what we would call oldies now, like stuff from the late 60s, early 70s. So I heard a ton of like the Beatles and the Stones and the Motown and that kind of top 40 stuff, which I still love. And I think that had a big influence on me in general. And especially like this songwriter, kind of 70s songwriters, like Carole King was one of hers like favorites that we had like the vinyl records of. And there's just like, I mean, this is again like before the age of like streaming media. So in my childhood, like you either had to listen to the radio or you had to have a physical copy of something. And so in my house, there was the Carole King vinyl, there was a Bob Dylan's greatest hits like CD that when I first time I listened to that, it just completely changed everything for me. There was like a cassette tape, a Willie Nelson cassette tape that I couldn't tell you what album it was, but it just also just like I never heard anything like that. And then I had a little Walkman, and it was just stuff that was laying around that kind of found its way to me. Another one, Don McLean, the American Pie record, if you know that.
Yeah.
The song American Pie, like just that kind of stuff I think still is like really present. If you listen to my music, you're like, oh, I can tell that you listen to that kind of stuff. But it was just around, and that was, I would put it on and check it out. And but yeah, definitely once I got old enough to kind of start finding my own stuff, I got really into just the rock and roll of the time, and then the indie bands. And when I got into college, that was a whole thing that I hadn't really, because that was sort of the very beginning of streaming music. So all of a sudden, when I got to college, there was just like this, the door was just like blown wide open with, I had access to everything.
Like almost overwhelming?
Kind of, yeah. Like I had this roommate that, so this is like in the Napster days. So I had this roommate, a friend who was like a computer guy, and he literally just downloaded, I would say, everything he could find. So like we had like a whole like server in our apartment of just music that was stolen, which is terrible, but
We all did it. We didn't like, I mean, I had no, you know.
yeah. But literally it was just like whatever you can imagine, you could search and it would be there, kind of the way Spotify is now, but it was like a homemade version of that. So then it's just like, okay, I found Radiohead, I found, you know, a bunch of jazz and like just all kinds of stuff that I couldn't even, you know, just anything you can imagine. And that's kind of where, at that point, where I got into more of the, like Lucinda Williams is a big one from that time in my life. Like the album Car Wheels on a Gravel Road changed my life when I heard that. It's just her writing and the sound of it, and that Americana kind of rootsy driven sound. I was like, oh, this is a thing. I mean, I had heard something like that before probably, but not done in that kind of way. I got into a lot of bands like that. I mean, I put Wilco in that category too, of just, they were sort of like more country Americana, and then they've moved into just, I guess, indie rock.
When you mentioned the Beatles, I've just been watching this thing on Disney, like I mean, it's been out for a couple years, but it's like a documentary of them like planning the performance on the roof.
Yeah.
And so I was like, you kind of have John Lennon glasses. That's kind of cool. Is that?
Thank you. Yeah.
I mean,
they're pretty recent. I'm basically blind. I'm like, I have very bad vision. I'm not blind, but like, you know, my vision's not great. I can see like shapes and colors without them, but I like them a lot. They're cool. Definitely a John Lennon fan, Beatles fan in general, but yeah, I'm down to look more like John Lennon.
But so another question that I ask, you know, I call everyone a kid, even though, you know, just kids that are in my age range. So millennials are babies born between 1981 and 1996. And just from what you're talking, I'm assuming you're somewhere under there.
Yeah.
I was wondering, like, any vibes you have of our generation or labels you've heard, or no thoughts at all, or?
I don't know. I mean, it's kind of a weird, I think it's like an interesting time to be alive in general. And we've seen like these like kind of like shifts, like growing up, like I said, we didn't have streaming media. We had, at least my house, and when I was a little kid, we didn't have cable. We had whatever you could get on the bunny ears, which was probably like 3 channels. So, I mean, I grew up watching like whatever was on TV, which was a lot of times like old episodes of Star Trek or something like that. Which that at that time that was already like super old. But I think we've just seen some like really big technological shifts. Like we didn't have cell phones, we didn't have high speed internet. I mean, I remember when we got AOL at our house, and that was like mind blowing. We had dial up, and so I think that stuff has affected our generation a lot. I think where like kids today, I even notice like younger musicians, for example, they could be like just starting out and already have like a big social media following just from being alive during this time. Whereas for me, I had to start from scratch, and I mean, I was starting at the beginning, but like it's just different if you're younger. Like you're just a person, and people, it's not the same. And just them navigating that stuff and just kind of having access to a lot more information. I feel like they have some maybe less challenges in some ways because they've had access to more information. They're a little bit more like well-rounded in some ways, I would say, because they, like just certain kinds of like things that maybe have flown in the past for other generations, they could just kind of look up on their phone and be like, no, that's not true, or whatever. And obviously, I know the internet's full of misinformation, and it goes both ways. But I think there's something positive there too, with just access, and maybe that we didn't have that. But even for somebody like me talking about learning music, I was able to teach myself a lot, basically everything I know, through just like Googling stuff. So, I mean, somebody before us would never have been able to do that. And I think that, in that way, it's like there's a lot of really positive things about being in our generation. So, yeah.
We're we kind of saw it all and know what life is like without technology, even though like it'd be pretty weird if that went away.
Yeah, like I think we all definitely, I think we have more context for it than people that are younger than us, which I think is something that gets like missed a lot by younger folks, but like also I think they have, their own unique perspective too. So, but yeah, there's so many different things that, I can remember like being just the Cold War, and like, I remember being a little kid and seeing the Berlin Wall fall, and then going through 9/11 and going through different financial times where going through COVID, and we've gone through a lot of crazy stuff, and just all the changes technologically, and
yeah, it's pretty I don't know if trippy is the right word, but I don't know, we just cosmic. Like a lot of shit, unfortunately, that I hope, I don't know.
And I think every generation has that, but definitely if you were born, there are people now who are, born after 9/11 but they still went through COVID, and there's still been different huge challenges.
No, totally.
Yeah.
Another kind of random question, and they do have me, like I said, on that timer, it's like 7 minutes, and
wow.
I'll get you to plug your music at the end where people can find you. But I am fascinated with unsolved mysteries from back in the day with Robert Stack, and so there was always this like one section called the Unexplained, and was wondering if you've ever had anything like unexplained happen. Like,
I've had the thing where, I guess it's called sleep paralysis, where you feel like somebody's touching you. I've had that, and I know that it's like a thing, but it also just felt very supernatural, and I don't really believe in that kind of stuff necessarily, but it did happen to me, and it was terrifying. And when it was happening, it felt like somebody was there.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I just say interesting just because I've had a couple people share about sleep paralysis and they all seem to be like different. But it's essentially like my understanding is like it's the same vibe where it's like you're awake but like you can't move. Is that correct?
I don't remember feeling like I couldn't move. I just remember feeling like I was scared to death. Like I didn't want to move because I was like,
Oh, interesting.
it felt like somebody was like hovering over me, like I was laying down, and it felt like they were hovering horizontally over me, and I was like, I could feel like a something, and then it felt like they touched me. I felt something like push right here, and then it like kind of went away, but then I still was just like, I wanted to sit still. In the moment, at least, it felt like I wanted to do that because I was scared. And I was like not a kid. I was like, I was in college when this happened. So, yeah, and it was just, I don't know. It still just feels like, I don't know what that was. But, yeah.
Well, I always say very cool. I mean, even though it was scary for you, I enjoy
Yeah.
hearing them. But so like I said, I'm gonna go until it literally cuts me off. But just to before that could happen, where can people find your music or a website or?
Yeah, so if you just, it's Elonzo Wesley, Elonzo, like a zebra. Elonzo Wesley. If you just search that, the website will come up, or if, on any socials, it's just at Elonzo Wesley. So we're on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, maybe a few others. I don't know what else is out there. I think that's it. But yeah, and then on Spotify, Apple Music, Elonzo Wesley. Yep.
Very cool. Like I said, so I've got a little under 5 minutes. So was curious, have you ever like encountered like dealing with like a scary fan? Like a stalker, I guess?
No, not really like that. I've had people that tried to like scam me. This lady she came to a show and like she was kind of being like a little bit like
Sketch.
overbearing and was like wanting me to let her into the show or something for free. I think I did it, and then she bought some some t-shirts and stuff like that, and then I forget the specifics, but I think it was like a Venmo or something like that. I can't remember, but she like basically didn't pay for the things, I didn't get the money, and I had to like follow up with her, and I think I just let it go eventually. But she was messaging me like a whole bunch of times about coming to the show for free and stuff like that.
That's annoying. So I guess it was like almost like uncomfortable from the jump.
Yes, like it was a red flag from the beginning, and I was kind of hoping this was a show in Nashville, which at the Great Eagle, which was a few years back, and like I was just trying to get people to come out, of course. So I did. I was like, yeah, whatever, however I can help you, kind of thing. But it was just there was always like right away. I was like, this feels
This is
off.
weird. Yeah.
Yeah. I think she just had some stuff going on, but still, it was weird.
Now, would you like what's your like dream? Like, I mean, obviously you're like living your dream, but do you have any like dream milestones or?
I mean, yeah, I mean, I'd like to. There's a couple venues I'd like to play. Like there was one growing up that I went to a lot in Charleston called the Music Farm, and it's like equivalent to like neighborhood theater in Charlotte. It's not unattainable, but I've just never played there for whatever reason. I've played a lot of places, and I've opened up for pretty big bands and done a lot of cool stuff. But that's like something that I'm still like waiting for the right time. But that would be amazing if I could do that.
Very
Yeah.
cool.
And that's like I think again pretty attainable, but.
And just so you know, so it'll cut off in a little over 2. But do you feel like Charlotte is the place for you? Like, do you have any desire to move?
No, I like it a lot. I mean, I lived in Atlanta before. We didn't really get to that, but those two cities get compared a lot to each other because
I
they're both,
know. What do you think of that?
regional, and I don't think they're really the same at all. I would say my general impression in Atlanta is that people are more, I feel like people are more interested in like, in Charlotte, people are just more like open, or they're less about like the rise to success or something. I don't know how to process that right now, but
I get
there's
it.
just a different vibe there where people are like, it's more flashy, it's more like
Absolutely.
high speed, like big city thing, and whereas Charlotte is a big city, but it's still has like a little bit of that like slower charm to it, and people are more personable and like in general. And I know that's like a big generalization, but
No,
I
I
love Charlotte. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a banking town, and people always talk about that, but there's always the duality in anything. So like, I feel like when you have that banking thing, you also have like an underbelly of like really cool stuff that's happening.
I think I think it's a cool time. I mean, I'm from
Yeah.
here, but I think like now is like a really cool
Yeah.
time to be here.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I mean, it's a good time when there's just like a lot of possibility. So I think that is always positive.
Right. Okay, well, before it cuts me off, thank you so much. What did
Yeah,
you
thank
think?
you. I love it. Yeah, it was fun.
Okay, cool vibes.
Well, thanks for having me. Thanks for asking. I appreciate it.
Yeah, this is cool. I really well, I've always tried to just I think it's important for me to connect to local artists here in town. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I'm excited to hear it, and yeah, thanks again.
thank you, and I'll be in touch and I'll come by the Evening Muse cuz it's long. It's long.
Yeah, do it. If not, like, come for the open mic.